All that changed in 1990 when I did get sober, when I refound my old self or whatever. And it was lovely to find that little boy again. But fame is a really incredible business.
Prince Charles's wife.
She was all alone in this empty kind of ballroom. And we chatted and, we talked about the wedding that was coming up and all that bit.
They were an unlikely pair at first glance, one, a flamboyant rock legend with outrageous costumes and a history of wild excess. The other, a reserved, shy royal who often seemed like a fragile bird trapped in a golden cage. But something about Elton John and Princess Diana their friendship blossomed in the 1980s, not out of convenience or publicity, but out of shared pain and mutual understanding. Both were icons in their own right, constantly scrutinized by the press, both misunderstood and both yearning for real human connection beyond the cameras and crowds. Elton once said, "She was the people's princess. She never forgot about the people." But what he left unsaid for decades was just how much she meant to him personally. Behind the scenes, Diana would call Elton during his darkest days, when addiction nearly consumed him and he felt utterly alone. He, in turn, would console her as her marriage crumbled and the relentless tabloid press devoured her life. They exchanged letters, private jokes, and late-night phone calls that no one ever knew about. In public, they laughed and smiled together at charity events. But privately, Diana confided in Elton things she didn't tell anyone else. She told him about the betrayal, the loneliness, and the claustrophobia of her royal life. And he, in return, gave her the rare gift of unconditional friendship, no expectations, no judgment. It was during the height of the AIDS crisis when their bond grew even deeper. Diana, unlike many public figures at the time, fearlessly embraced AIDS patients, held their hands, kissed them on the cheek, and used her influence to change hearts. Elton was astounded by her compassion, said that Diana was the only one. With warmth in her hands in a world full of cold institutions, their friendship was far more than just a celebrity connection. It was two souls, battered and weary, clinging to each other for emotional survival in a world that was always watching and never forgiving. But things were not always perfect between them. Elton and Diana had a falling out in the months before her tragic death. Few people know this, but the rift between them was caused by something that hurt them both deeply. It all began when Gianni Versace, one of their mutual friends and a key link in their shared social circle, was murdered in July 1997. Diana had known Gianni personally. She loved his designs and admired his boldness, while Elton had been one of his closest friends. When Elton and Gianni's family published a coffee table book filled with lavish celebrity tributes and photography to honor him, Gianna reportedly pulled out at the last minute. Elton felt blindsided, saw it as a betrayal, not just to him, but to Gianni's memory. For the first time in their long friendship, Elton and Diana stopped speaking. The silence between them lingered awkwardly, and time was too short for healing. Then, on August 31st, 1997, came the news that shattered the world. Princess Diana had died in a car crash in Paris. Elton was devastated. Guilt swept over him like a tidal wave. In his book Me, he confesses that he cried for days, not only because she was gone, but because they had never reconciled. "I was angry at myself, angry at the world," he wrote, "and I was completely broken." But from that pain came one of Elton's most powerful tributes, his reworking of Candle in the Wind. Performed live at her funeral in Westminster Abbey, it was the first and only time he sang it in that form. Elton sat at the piano, fighting back tears, playing for the woman who had meant more to him than most people ever knew. That performance touched millions and became the fastest-selling single in UK chart history, but it wasn't about the numbers. It was his way of saying goodbye, of saying sorry, and saying thank you, in that one moment. All the private words. They had shared all the phone calls, the laughter, the grief they poured out through every lyric and every note. Elton would later say, "It was the hardest thing I've ever done." But he did it for her, and only her. In the years since Diana's death, Elton John has never let her memory fade from his heart. He speaks of her not as a symbol, not as the world's princess, but as his friend. He still remembers their private dinners, her wicked sense of humor, and the way she could make him laugh when nothing else could. In interviews and memoirs, he's peeled back the curtain bit by bit, revealing the quiet moments the public never saw. The time she showed up unexpectedly at one of his concerts and danced in the wings all night, the phone call they shared, the night before she was supposed to visit New York, a trip she never got to take. In 2019, Elton confessed a truth he had held in 4 years. He was still haunted by the silence between them before her death. "If I could take back anything," he said, "it would be that stupid argument. I wish I'd called. I wish I'd said I was sorry." That vulnerability, that raw humanity, is what has always set Elton apart from other legends. Beneath the glitter and feathers is a man who has lost people he loved, and who isn't afraid to say that grief never really goes away. He has since dedicated performances to Diana, named charitable endeavors in her honor, and remained close with her sons, especially Prince Harry, who has spoken about how much Elton meant to his mother. When Harry and Meghan married, it was Elton who performed at their reception. It's a full-circle moment that quietly honored the bond between him and Diana. Elton has also worked tirelessly through his AIDS Foundation, continuing the causes Diana once championed, ensuring that the compassion she showed to the world's forgotten never dies. Through every note he plays and every memory he shares, Elton John keeps the spirit of Princess Diana alive, not as a royal or a celebrity, but as a deeply cherished friend. And in doing so, he finally confesses the truth, not a scandal, not a secret, but a simple, devastating human truth, that love, even in friendship, is the one thing that never truly dies. By the mid-1980s, it was clear that Princess Diana and Prince Charles were no longer a love story. The age difference between them, nearly 13 years, was no longer just a footnote in a royal fairy tale. It was a canyon. They were living under the same roof but worlds apart. Diana, young and emotionally raw, began a relationship in 1986 with James Hewitt, a former cavalry officer and family riding instructor. The public wouldn't learn of the affair for years, but rumors eventually swirled, even stirring cruel and false speculation that Hewitt could be Prince Harry's biological father, something factually impossible, as Harry was born 2 years before Diana and Hewitt even met. But these headlines reflected the toxicity of royal gossip at the time. Meanwhile, Prince Charles had resumed his long-standing affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, further straining the marriage. The press began referring to Charles and Diana as the Glums, a grim nickname that echoed their uncomfortable and distant public appearances. In 1989, Diana confronted Camilla at a birthday party, looking her directly in the eyes and saying, "I know what's going on between you and Charles. I just want you to know that." This private moment of confrontation showed that Diana was no longer willing to live the lie in silence. Things escalated in 1992 when journalist Andrew Morton published Diana, Her True Story, a bombshell biography based on secretly recorded tapes Diana had made in private. These confessions revealed emotional abuse, suicidal ideation, and Diana's despair. "Charles made me feel so inadequate," she said in one tape, "that every time I came up for air, he pushed me down again." That same year, transcripts of intimate phone calls, both hers and Charles's, were leaked to the media, including the infamous Tampongate tapes with Camilla, making their private dysfunction a public scandal. The royal family could no longer contain the crisis. Diana confessed deep feelings for her former bodyguard, Barry Manicky, saying she would have left the royal life to be with him. He tragically died in a motorcycle accident shortly after being removed from his post. While the Queen and Prince Philip tried to repair the broken marriage, the emotional damage had already been done. The couple formally separated in December 1992, ending any illusion of unity. But the true shock came in 1995, when Diana gave a raw, unprecedented interview to BBC's Panorama. Sitting across from journalist Martin Bashir, Diana admitted to her affair and discussed Charles's relationship with Camilla, saying there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. She also publicly questioned whether Charles was fit to be king, spoke openly about bulimia, depression, and cutting, and described herself as isolated and neglected. What the public didn't know then was that Bashir had manipulated Diana's fears using forged bank documents to gain her trust and act Prince William would later condemn as betrayal. Within a month of the broadcast, Queen Elizabeth formally urged both Charles and Diana to divorce. Diana, ever defiant, announced her agreement in her own statement before any official confirmation from Buckingham Palace. In 1996, when Diana falsely accused Charles's assistant, Aggie Legburk, of having had an abortion, an accusation likely planted by Bashir. To secure more trust from Diana, her private secretary resigned in protest. Still, the divorce was finalized on August 28, 1996. Diana received a £17 million settlement, retained shared custody of William and Harry, and most controversially was stripped of her title, Her Royal Highness. Charles insisted on the removal, though the Queen reportedly objected. It was William who comforted his mother, whispering to her, "Don't worry, Mummy, I'll give it back to you one day when I'm king." It was a moment of pure love amid a royal war by this time. Elton John had already become a recurring presence at royal gatherings. In 1981, he performed at Prince Andrew's 21st birthday, dancing with Princess Anne and even Queen Elizabeth herself. But it was on that night he met Diana, charming, socially graceful, and full of life. She had fabulous social ease, Elton recalled. That night we just clicked. It was the beginning of a unique friendship built on shared experience. Both were public figures constantly hounded by the press. Both endured loneliness despite their status, and both used humor. To survive the pain, Elton admired Diana's boldness and humanity. He loved her dinner table gossip, her mischievous smile, and the way she never quite followed the royal rulebook. She in turn loved Elton's warmth, his honesty, and his ability to make her laugh in ways few others could. Their friendship grew stronger during the AIDS crisis, where Diana famously shattered stigma by embracing AIDS patients at a time when misinformation and fear were rampant. Elton watched in awe. "She changed the world with a touch," he said, but even close friendships suffer turbulence. In 1997, Diana pulled out of a charity book Elton was organizing in honor of their mutual friend Gianni Versace, who had just been murdered in Miami. She sent Elton a formal apology letter beginning with "Dear Mr. John," which stung him deeply. He was hurt, confused, and believed palace pressure had played a role. They stopped speaking. But in the days after Versace's funeral, Diana reached out. "I'm so sorry," she said over the phone. "It was a silly falling out. Let's be friends again." Elton was relieved. They laughed, reconciled, and made plans to meet up soon. But that meeting never happened. On August 31st, 1997, Diana was killed in a tragic car crash in the Ponte de Lama tunnel in Paris, pursued by paparazzi. Her companion, Dodi Fade, and driver Henry Paul also perished. The world went into mourning. Diana's funeral on September 6 was viewed by over 2.5 billion people worldwide. Elton, devastated, was asked to perform a special version of his song "Candle in the Wind," rewritten with new lyrics by Bernie Taupin. It became one of the most emotional moments in live broadcast history. "It was the hardest performance of my life," Elton said later. But it wasn't about me, it was for her. The revised song included the haunting line, "You called out to our country, and you whispered to those in pain." It was a eulogy in melody, a final gift from a friend to another. And it didn't just comfort a grieving world, it helped raise millions for Diana's charities. To this day, Elton refuses to perform that version of the song again, saying it belongs only to her. Years have passed, but Elton John's grief remains palpable. He's been outspoken about the emotional scars left by Diana's death, and especially about the way her sons William and Harry were made to walk behind her coffin during the funeral procession. "They were just boys," he said, 15 and 12. It was inhuman. His words were not born from politics or spectacle, but from pain rooted in genuine friendship. Since Diana's death, Elton has remained close to her sons, particularly Harry. He performed at Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018, a symbolic full-circle moment that honored his bond with their mother. When Harry faced intense media pressure in 2019, Elton stepped forward, saying, "I feel a deep sense of obligation to protect Harry and his family from the press intrusion that killed his mother." Elton has also continued Diana's humanitarian legacy. channeling funds and awareness through the Elton John AIDS Foundation, and staying involved in the causes Diana once championed. In recent interviews, Elton has quietly reflected on their falling out in 1997. He suggested it may have been influenced by palace politics, but added that Diana's call to reconcile remains one of the most meaningful gestures of his life. Said the moment taught him that real friendships, no matter how brief or strained, are worth salvaging. Diana may have lost her royal title, but she never lost her place in Elton's heart. In his words, she was the kindest person I ever knew. Their friendship, though forged in a strange blend of glamour, sadness, and fame, was genuine. It taught both of them and the world that even under the heaviest crowns and brightest spotlights, we all long for the same things: connection, kindness, and someone to truly understand us. And in that shared space, Elton and Diana found each other. Their story isn't just a footnote in history. It's a reminder that real love, even in friendship, is timeless.